picture this. You're lying in bed at 1 a.m., phone in hand, halfway through some random personality quiz you found online. You answer the questions. You hit submit, and then the result loads and your jaw just drops. INFJ, the advocate, the rarest personality type on Earth. And something happens in your chest. This strange, warm feeling, like you've just been handed a note that says, "We see you." You start reading the description and it's like, wait, how does this website know about the thing I do where I can feel a conversation going wrong 3 sentences before it actually does? How does it know I've been carrying everyone else's emotional weight since I was 9 years old? How does it know that I need days alone after a single dinner with friends, even friends I genuinely love? You screenshot it. You send it to 3 people. You type INFJ into YouTube at midnight and fall into a rabbit hole that lasts until 3 a.m. Sound familiar? Here's the thing nobody tells you though, and I need you to hear this before we go any further. INFJ is statistically supposed to represent less than 2% of the entire human population. 1 in every 50 people on the planet. So why does every comment section, every Reddit thread, every Discord server dedicated to personality types look like an INFJ reunion? I'll tell you why. And the answer might genuinely change the way you see yourself. Today, we're not just listing traits. We're cracking open the actual wiring of the INFJ mind, calling out the real reasons people misidentify, and giving you an honest mirror, not a flattering one. A true one. By the end, you'll know. One way or the other. The flattery trap. Let's be completely real with each other for a second. The INFJ archetype the internet has built up is honestly kind of irresistible. The quiet genius who reads people like open books. The tortured empath with a poet's soul and a warrior's resilience. The misunderstood visionary who suffers in silence and transforms that suffering into wisdom. Who on earth doesn't want to be that person? This is the trap. And it's not your fault for falling into it. It's been engineered by years of romanticized content that takes real psychological concepts and layers them with just enough vague, beautiful language to make almost anyone feel like it's describing them specifically. Psychologists call this the Barnum effect, named after the showman famous for saying there's a little something for everyone. When personality descriptions are written broadly enough, you feel misunderstood, you care deeply but hide it, you're wise beyond your years, they feel personal and precise, even though they'd resonate with a huge percentage of thoughtful, introverted people who read them. So ask yourself honestly, are you drawn to INFJ because it accurately describes the mechanics of how your mind builds understanding? Or because the story around it feels like the one you want to be living? Both are human. Only one is accurate typing. Feeling deeply isn't proof of anything. It makes you human, not rare. The engine nobody explains. Here's the truth that separates real INFJs from everyone else who thinks they might be one. The defining feature isn't sensitivity. It isn't introversion. It isn't even empathy, as powerful as that empathy is. The thing that makes an INFJ genuinely distinct is their dominant cognitive function, introverted intuition, NI. And NI is one of the hardest things in all of psychology to put into plain language. But it's worth the attempt because everything else traces back to it. Introverted intuition is a convergent process, where most people's thinking works by scanning outward, generating options, exploring possibilities, considering angles. NI works in the opposite direction. Compresses. It pulls threads from completely separate domains. A shift in someone's tone, a pattern repeating for the 3rd time, a detail from weeks ago that suddenly locks into place. And it fuses all of that into a single, sharp insight that arrives fully formed, without steps, without evidence the conscious mind can articulate. Think of 2 different minds. One works like fireworks, shooting outward in every direction, chasing every possibility at once. That's closer to extrovert intuition. NI works almost backward, more like a detective slowly pinning clues to a corkboard until a single picture snaps into focus. Once it does, the INFJ trusts it completely, sometimes before they can even explain the reasoning behind it. INFJs often describe this as simply knowing. They know how a relationship is going to end before it's really started. They sense the structural flaw in a plan while everyone else is still excited about the idea. They notice something off in a person's behavior and know, without being able to point to a single thing, that something is being hidden. And then they have to live in the gap between what they perceive and what they can prove. They mention it carefully and they get dismissed. Overthinking. Too sensitive. You're being paranoid. And then months later, it plays out exactly as they said. This experience of knowing, of waiting, of being wrong in the room and right in the end is one of the loneliest things about being this type. Ever been asked, how did you know that was going to happen? And genuinely had no clean answer? That unexplainable certainty is an I doing exactly its job. Borrowed weather. Now, the feeling function, and this is where the biggest misidentifications happen. INFJs run on Extraverted Feeling, or FE, which faces outward. It doesn't just track one person's emotional state. It reads the entire room. It picks up on the emotional undercurrent of groups, the unspoken tension in social dynamics, the collective mood that nobody has named yet. When an INFJ walks into a space, they're not just noticing how one person feels. They're receiving the whole emotional field simultaneously. And it's not a choice. It just happens. Most empathetic people understand how someone feels. They can imagine it, relate to it. That's healthy, beautiful empathy. INFJs don't just understand. They absorb. A friend can walk through the door and the INFJ already knows something's wrong. Not because of anything that was said, not because of any visible cue, but because something just landed on them, shifted the air. This is where it stops being just being sensitive and starts being something harder to live with. Because when you absorb emotions the way INFJs do, those emotions linger after the conversation ends. The INFJ goes home still carrying the weight of someone else's grief, someone else's anxiety, someone else's unspoken tension, and has to actively, intentionally shake it off. That's why INFJs need so much solitude. Not because they don't like people. They love people deeply, but each meaningful interaction leaves a residue, and they need quiet time alone just to find themselves again underneath it all. If social situations leave you feeling strangely depleted in a way that goes beyond just being tired, if you go home after an evening with friends and need days to feel like yourself again, that's closer to the real INFJ experience. The warm disguise. Here's a twist that throws people off constantly. INFJs get mistaken for extroverts all the time. Thanks to FE, they can be warm, funny, magnetic in social settings, reading the room, matching its energy, making strangers feel instantly comfortable. Often so convincingly that coworkers and even close friends are stunned to learn they're introverted underneath it all. That performance isn't free, though. Every ounce of warmth is being generated, monitored, and adjusted live in real time. Not fake, the care is genuine, but exhausting in a way a natural extrovert never quite experiences the same way. An INFJ can leave a great party, one where they laughed and connected and left everyone smiling, and still feel completely hollowed out the second they're alone in the car. That's the warm disguise, not a mask worn to deceive, a management system that quietly runs the whole night and clocks out the second the door closes. The lookalikes. Before anything else, let's clear up who INFJs get confused with because it happens constantly and it's rarely random. INFP is the most common mix-up. Both look gentle, thoughtful, idealistic on the surface. Both feel things intensely and have been called too sensitive by someone who didn't understand them. But the orientation of their feeling is completely different. FE is relational and collective. The INFJ is constantly scanning the room's weather and adjusting the temperature. FI is personal and internal. The INFP is constantly checking their own compass to make sure they haven't drifted off course. One is a harmony architect. The other is a values warrior. If your emotional processing is primarily inward, if you're more moved by your personal code of values than by social atmosphere, look at INFP. That's not a downgrade. It's a different kind of extraordinary. INTJ is the second most common. Both share the I engine, so both can seem distant, strategic, oddly prophetic. The split shows up one layer down. INTJs pair their I with extrovert thinking, blunt, efficiency-obsessed, comfortable with direct confrontation. INFJs lead with FE, so even their sharpest opinions arrive wrapped in diplomacy first. When you walk into a conflict, what's your first instinct? Map the logic of the situation, or consider how everyone is feeling and how to protect the relationship while working toward a solution. That single question usually breaks the tie. ISFJ rounds out the main group. Both are introverted, warm, and service-oriented. But ISFJs lead with introverted sensing, anchored to tradition, routine, and concrete personal memory. INFJs are abstract and future-facing, always working in the realm of patterns and what might be coming. If you feel more at home in what's known and proven than in what hasn't arrived yet, ISFJ deserves exploration. Nearly every mix-up traces back to confusing a surface trait, sensitivity, quiet, idealism with the actual engine driving it. Two people can look nearly identical on the outside while running on completely different wiring underneath. The silence before the door closes. Almost everyone who identifies as INFJ has heard of the door slam, and the way it gets described online has turned it into something glamorous and decisive sounding, which means a lot of people are calling something the door slam when it's actually something else entirely. The real INFJ door slam doesn't look like anger. It doesn't look like a dramatic exit or a cutting final message. It doesn't feel righteous or powerful in the moment. It's not even really a decision the INFJ consciously makes. It's the surface expression of something that already happened internally, weeks or months earlier, when an I quietly processed the whole pattern of the relationship and concluded, with that deep wordless certainty, that nothing was going to change. By the time anyone on the outside notices the INFJ has gone quiet, the INFJ has already grieved the relationship. They saw the problem early. They tried to fix it. They gave second chances, third chances, fourth. They held on longer than anyone else would have, because they could see the person's potential so clearly and genuinely believed in it. But at some point, after enough broken trust, after enough being dismissed, something quietly shifts. And the INFJ doesn't slam the door in a dramatic sense. They simply stop. They let the connection drain out. That's why they seem so calm about it. It's not coldness. It's completion. The door doesn't slam. It just closes, softly, and the person on the other side often doesn't even hear it happen. If your version of cutting people off comes with heat, with anger, with a need to have your feelings acknowledged before you go, that's a valid response to being hurt, but it's probably not the specific mechanism. The genuine article has no heat, because by the time it arrives, the feeling is already over. The blind spots nobody warns you about. Here's the uncomfortable part. The part that separates genuine self-awareness from comfortable mythology. INFJs have blind spots, real ones. And if you only ever consume content that tells you how gifted and rare and beautiful your inner world is, you'll never see them, and they'll quietly run your life. The first, locking people in. Because an I is so powerful, INFJs can form a very fixed impression of someone quickly and hold on to it long after the person has changed. They trust their read, sometimes too much. That means they occasionally judge people unfairly and never give them room to surprise them. The second, sacrificing honesty for harmony. INFJs are so attuned to the emotional temperature of their relationships that they'll sometimes agree with things they don't agree with, go along with things that don't sit right, absorb unfair treatment and swallow the discomfort, because confrontation feels like breaking something precious. Over time, that builds resentment that has nowhere to go. The third, refusing to receive care. INFJs are extraordinary at giving it. They're terrible at accepting it. When someone tries to show up for them, they deflect. They minimize. They say they're fine when they're absolutely not, meaning it as a kindness, not wanting to burden anyone. But what it actually does is keep them isolated inside a role that slowly suffocates them. Real growth for an INFJ isn't about becoming a better helper. It's about learning to let others in. The loneliness nobody talks about. There's a specific flavor of loneliness that keeps surfacing in INFJ conversations, and it isn't the loneliness of solitude. INFJs feel their deepest loneliness in a room full of people. Because of the way Faye constantly reads social and emotional atmosphere, the INFJ at a party or gathering is not relaxing. They're working, tracking everyone's emotional state, managing the comfort of the room, listening at a depth that most conversations don't invite or reward. They're being genuinely present for every person they talk to, and nobody is doing that for them. They go home from social events more aware than ever of the gap between the connection they're capable of and the connection they're actually receiving. They've given everything to everyone in that room, and they've received small talk and surface pleasantries in return. There's glass between them and everyone else. They're there, warm, engaging, but not reached. What INFJs are actually starving for isn't more time with people. It's depth. The specific relief of a conversation where the real questions are finally allowed, where nobody has to perform. When they find that, a person, a relationship that goes all the way down, it doesn't feel like friendship. It feels like oxygen. When the signal flips, there's one more piece worth knowing, and it only shows up when everything else has already been pushed too far. Most of the time, an INFJ lives in the future, in patterns, in meaning, in what's coming. But push them into prolonged, serious stress and something strange happens. That quiet, future-focused mind suddenly craves the opposite. Loud music, reckless spending, binge eating, doom scrolling for hours, compulsive cleaning instead of addressing whatever is actually wrong. Sudden, uncharacteristic impulsiveness that looks nothing like their usual self. This is the inferior function extrovert sensing, cracking through the surface. The least used function on the whole stack, yanked into the driver's seat with none of the practice a natural sensor would have. Friends and family describe it as the INFJ, acting completely out of character. And that's exactly what it is. If a stretch of your life left you chasing sensation in a way that felt totally unlike you, only to fade once the stress passed, that's not a random mood swing. That's the one part of your mind that almost never steers, suddenly grabbing the wheel. To the real ones, if you are an INFJ, actually cognitively, structurally, there's something most content in this space never quite says directly. You are not here to carry everyone. You came with an extraordinary set of tools, the ability to see what others miss, to feel what others ignore, to sense the shape of something long before it arrives. Those tools matter. Deeply. The world genuinely needs the kind of seeing you do. But those tools were not meant to be placed entirely in service of other people's healing while you stay empty. You are not a battery. You are not a service. You are a full human being with your own interior life that deserves the same quality of attention you give to everyone else. People are drawn to you. It starts early. A classmate who felt safe telling you their secrets. A family member who always calls when things fall apart. Strangers on planes who share things they've never told anyone. You hold all of it. You're genuinely good at it. But nobody is holding it for you. The version of you the world benefits from most is not the one that gives until nothing is left. It's the version that has learned, slowly and sometimes painfully, how to protect what it needs, speak what's true, and let someone else hold the space for once. You deserve the kind of connection you've spent your whole life offering other people. Don't convince yourself you're too complicated to receive it. You've just been so busy giving that you forgot receiving was an option. Your verdict. So, are you an INFJ? If the specific, strange, uncomfortable parts of this landed, the convergent knowing, the room reading that happens without trying, the paradox of needing people and needing to be away from them at the same time, the loneliness in crowds, the seeing too soon, then yes, there's a real chance you are. But if what resonated was mostly the beautiful parts, the rare and misunderstood parts, the deeply empathetic and insightful parts, dig a little deeper before you land. Because those parts were designed to resonate widely. The strange parts are the real test. Explore the cognitive functions. Sit with INFP and INTJ and ISFJ until one of them doesn't just feel flattering but feels embarrassingly accurate. That's how you know. Because the goal was never to belong to a label. It was to understand yourself with enough precision and honesty that you can actually use that understanding, to stop working against your own nature and start building a life that works with it. Whether you walk away from this more certain you're an INFJ, or more curious about who you might actually be, both of those are good outcomes. Both of them point in the same direction. And here's the truth at the bottom of all of this. The rarest thing about INFJs isn't the label. It's what they do with it, the willingness to carry convergent perception, to know things they can't prove and wait for reality to catch up. To absorb the emotional weight of rooms and relationships and keep showing up anyway. To want depth in a world that keeps rewarding surface. That's not a personality type. That's a way of inhabiting life. If you've always had it, even before you had a name for it, you already knew. Long before this video. Long before the test. You just needed someone to say it clearly enough that you could stop second-guessing yourself. Consider it said.